Hello everyone, welcome back. I hope you all have practiced whatever we have covered so far. And in this video, we will continue with the answer for why multiple inheritance in Java is not supported via class, but it is supported via interface. And to understand about interface, I think we are one step behind. So first, we need to understand what is static and non static. Okay, we already seen what is a return type, right? For example, um, let's take this main method. We understood what is public, right? Public is the access modifier, and based on what we are giving there, it defines who and all can access this particular method. For example, yeah, so if I give private, this particular method will be only accessible within this class. If I give protected, it will be accessible by the child classes. If I not give anything, then it is mean a package protected, which will means it can be only accessed by all the class files within the same package, right? And if I make it as public, it can be accessed by anyone, right? And we also know what is a return type. Return type means it defines what this method returns after doing all these mentioned stuff, right? So once we also understand what is this, and we also know what is the this is a method name, but this one is not we have covered so far, right? That's what we are going to cover in today's class before we head on to understand what is interfaces and how it supports multiple inheritance, right? Yeah, so let's take okay, what we'll do, we'll take a different example altogether so that it's easier for you to understand. Maybe guys, again, if you want to create a new class, better to group them together. So for example, today I'm going to create a student class, so I'm just keeping all these things inside a student, right? And I'm just first creating the package, and then I'll create a class that is starting with capital S, right? If you also notice the convention, for all the packages, I use small letters. For all the classes, I use the capital letters at the first, right? So this is the convention, and you need to follow this, right? Good. So again, guys, instead of doing this, like creating the package and then doing the classes, there is also a thing where you just right click, create new class, and then you can mention this package. Of that, you can put a dot and then create a class, right? So IntelliJ is smart enough to understand that you want to create a package and then you want to create a class, right? Yeah. Now let's see. We want to create a student database, right? So who are all is joining to the this particular school, you want to create a student database, right? For that, first you want to get the student name. So we are having public string name, and we also want to give them some roll numbers. So maybe we'll use roll numbers, right? And for time being, I'm not taking all the other parameters, but we also want to make sure that they all have school name. Maybe imagine, right? So imagine you want to give them the ID card, and the ID card needs to have all these details, right? So this is what it is, right? Now let's go and create a new test class so that it's more easy for us to understand. So student test, and the student test will have its main method. Now let me create the first student. Student again, guys, you can also create it differently. I'll tell you how that. So instead of you typing student new student, okay, uh, okay, instead of you typing this whole thing, what you can also do, right? First you can type the new, okay, student, okay, and then you can press alt and enter, and then there is an option here, introduce new local variable, right? So you can type this. Yeah, so now it will create a new thing for you. You don't have to type the right, left hand side, so you can save a little bit of time, right? So so that's all about it. Either ways, whatever you feel fine, you can use it. So it's about how fastly we are coding, right? So we are not spending our time doing all these things. We are leveraging the IDE shortcuts to write our faster code, right? Let's say for the first student, I want to set the name. For example, I want to set the name as this. Maybe you can use a constructor or certain methods or whatever you feel comfortable, but for now, simplicity reasons, I'm using like this, okay? Maybe this is just a roll number and student school name. Let's say the school name is ABCD, right? And let's also copy this maybe, and then student one. For student one also we need to give some name. So this is the name of the second student and the roll number is 2, but the school name remains the same. Let's say you are creating 500 student objects. Okay, 500 student, you're creating ID for 500 students, right? And every time you create a new student, it creates new memory in the heap, right? For example, let's put it in a diagram so that you can imagine what's happening. So let's say this is the heap memory. So this memory is called as heap memory. You don't really have to worry about it for now, but just understand whatever the objects that you are going to create are all going to lie here. Okay, they will find some space here. So when I say, it's stored in memory means it's getting stored somewhere, right? And this place is called as heap memory. There are other memories as well, but we will try to focus only on this now, right? So the first student that you created will have something like this. Okay, um, maybe very small. So s1 dot name will be here, right? So this will occupy some memory. Again, the another variable will also be there that will occupy some memory, and then there is another variable that will be having school that is also having some. So these three will occupy three memories. Okay, just imagine if one variable is occupying 1 byte, other two will also occupy one. So it will occupy total of three memory. The same way, you are basically creating a lot of things. So everything, every object that you create, they will occupy three memories, right? What is the problem with this? See, the school is common for all of them, right? So if you're creating 500 objects, if you can, have a provision to make use of the school variable only once. Okay, you don't want to define this 500 times. Instead of declaring 500 times, you want to make use of that only one time, right? You want to declare it only one time, and you want to make that available for all the objects, right? So that you can save 500 memories here, right? In this example itself. So in those cases, you can make sorry guys, okay, you can make this as a static one. When you make something as a static, okay, you basically can reuse that. So for example, here I can mention ABCD. That's it, right? So now this is common for everyone. So if I go here, if you have a static, if you have something a static, you should not call that with the reference variable. It is always good that you call with student dot school name. Okay, so if you want to change, okay, you can change it like this. Okay, okay, so if since it is already allocated, you don't even have to type this, right? If you want to change it, you can change it, right? Let's say they're changing the school name now. Okay, you want to do it. Okay, whatever. And now if you try to print the school name, okay, so this will get changed. So this is common for all the objects. Okay, common for all the objects. So whatever the objects you have, everything will have it. Okay, this is not a good practice to call let's say student dot see, the IntelliJ IDEA is very smart. Okay, it is not even giving you the option to call the school name, even though the student have one property called a school name. But since that is static, you are trying to access this is the reference variable, so that why it's not telling the option. But you can basically type it and then do s out so that you can see what's happening. Okay, let me also do an s out. For all of these is the same, right? So every time it will print the same value. So first it took the default values from ABCD, right? Then I changed it, okay, using the class name dot the variable name. Then for everyone it will be like this. Okay, even if I print this, okay, again it'll get changed for all of them, right? So I just changed here, and then it gets applicable to all the child as well, right? So see all the objects as well. So that's the advantage of using static. So static variables are really helpful uh, for memory management. Okay, memory management, they are not specific to a particular object. For example, if you notice, this name is very particular to this object which is referenced by this variable, right? So if you want to change this name, you have to use this variable to change it. But here, the school name is static and it's not particular to any object. It is bounded to the class. So I can directly use the class name dot that variable name to change it or modify it. So yeah, so this is it. So static variables help you for memory management. They are also not specific to a particular object, which means they are bounded to classes rather than the object, right? And this should be used when you want to when you want to have a common property for all the objects that you are going to create for a class. But if when you should use non-static, so we call this as non-static. Use non-static when each object have different value for this. Okay, yeah, for every student they'll have a different name, so we have to use as a non-static, right? And when you want to have a common thing, okay, when common for all objects, okay, so then you can use static. Okay, and most importantly, if you have a constructor, right? So let's say you have a constructor that is student. Let me also put it as a public so that won't throw any errors. Now, if you have a student, okay, most probably you can set these values via this, right? So you can set name equal to whatever the default values, okay, and then roll number equal to some values via this, right? Can we set, okay, can we set this? Yes, you can set this with the help of constructor, but the thing is, don't do it. Okay, this is not a good practice to set via constructor, right? Constructors are meant to be used to initialize your non-static variables, okay, not the static variables. Okay, so even though you can do it, you should not do it. Okay, that's why this ID is so suggesting. See, this is not a really good practice. As I remove this. Okay, I'll do it the same way. Whenever you are accessing a static variable, don't use an object reference where you are using an object reference, that is student, to access it. Don't use it. Okay, this is not a good approach. See, when I hover my OS, access static student dot school name via student reference. Okay, you want to use class. See here, it didn't throw any error because I used class name. The reason being, if you access this with the help of object reference and then changing it, let's say you are changing it like this, student dot school name, okay, equal to, let's say you are changing it to some value, okay, okay, other objects might not be really understanding what's happened, right? So it is not a really good approach. Even though you can access static variables, you should not do it. Okay, always use class reference. Okay, again guys, if you don't understand, that's fine, but just one thing keep in mind: static variables are predominantly used for memory management. Okay, if you think all the objects are going to share some property, then keep it as a static so that you don't have to initialize it, or you don't want to allocate a lot of memory to it. Okay, again, this is not specific to an object and this is bound to class. That's more than enough. Okay, any doubts in this? Okay, now, so now we have seen what is a static variable, but you also need to know what is a static method, right? Let's take an example, like static void display, maybe something like this. And yeah, yes, out name plus roll number plus ABCD. sorry, school name. Okay, now if you notice, this is now throwing error. Why? Okay, so if you are creating a static method, these static methods can only interact with static variables. Okay, if you notice, the school name doesn't throw any error. Okay, but the non-static variables, when you try to access it, it is throwing error. Because guys, you just need to imagine. Okay, we go to the same diagram. Okay, the name id is very specific to object reference. Okay, but the static method that you are going to create is again, okay, the static method that you are going to create is common for all the objects. Okay, now, oh, that's the reason, your static method can only access and change the static variables. Let's say change school name. Okay, you can have a method, static method called as change school name, that basically the school name equal to some other value. It sets to some other value, right? This is possible. Okay, because it has only the access to change it, because static method and static variables are common for all objects. Okay, if you try to change this, okay, if you try to change this, it doesn't know which object to change. Okay, so there is a, suppose you want to change, you want to create one more method, void change, okay, student name. Okay, change student name. Now you want to change the student name, I'm just telling this, right? Now Java compiler is telling error, because hey, you are telling you want to change an instance variable that is very specific to an object, that is specific to one object. Okay, now which object I need to change? Okay, there can be 5,000 objects in the memory. Which object you want to change? I don't know, I cannot do it. Okay, I don't have the control. Okay, that's the reason you cannot change, or alter or access a non-static variable inside the static method. Okay, the reason is that you cannot, it cannot define which object it needs to access. But here, since this is common for all the objects, it can able to modify it. Okay, oh, this one, okay, there is only one thing in the memory, I will go and change it, because it is common for all the things, right? But here it doesn't know which object to change, because it goes and search for name, there is s1 dot name, and here you also have uh, s2 dot name, you also have s3 dot name. Okay, for different student objects, it has different variables. Okay, it doesn't know whether to change this or to change this or whether to change this. So that's the reason you cannot access a non-static variable inside a static method. Okay, then why this static method is used, right? So if you want to operate on static variables, you can use static methods. And again, static methods again helps us with memory management. For example, you have a class called as math. Okay, you have a class called as math, and then you have a lot of utilities called as, let's say, power. POW means it's like you want to take up 2 power 3, we want to calculate what is 2 power 3, 2 power 8, whatever. So the same way, if you have a lot of things, okay, if you want to remove the floating points, okay, you want to do the 4 division, floor modification, you want to do addition. Okay, so you want to do all these things. Okay, these guys have created it as a static method, because you are accessing that with the help of class name dot method name. So mostly your helper methods and utility classes doesn't need any objects. Okay, because whatever the object you have, if you want to do addition, okay, we will just call it add exact or whatever, and then we'll tell 5,6. Okay, so this behavior is common for all of them, right? So why do you want to really create an object and then do it? Okay, that's the reason the math class. Okay, if you go to the math class, okay, this is the final class, and they all have a lot of static. See, if you notice, they have pi, that is 3.141, right? These things are there because this is common for everyone, right? And guys, please go on mute. Okay, so this is common for everyone. So if you notice all these things, the degrees to radians, radians to degrees, these are all universal truths, right? So they kept it as static and final, right? And then if you want to find sine, it is just basic mathematics, right? So for all the objects, it's going to remain the same. So that's why you use static methods when you want to save memory, as well as you want to define something that is common for all the objects, some behavior that is common for all the objects. You have static variables to define some property that is common for all the objects. This is some behavior common for all the objects. This is some property common for all the objects. Good. So that's all about static method and static let's say let's remove all these things. And if you want to access this, right, change school name. If you want to access this, instead of previously we altered with the help of student the school name. So if we are making it as a private to provide more control, then we can go to the student test, can remove all these things, we don't need them, right? We can directly tell student dot, okay, change school name, right? So this is how you can call a static method, right? So let's run it. Yeah, so this one will be really helpful if you want to create a utility class. For example, in Selenium we might click a class called as you want to create a Selenium actions class, okay? And then in this actions class we can create methods like click, okay, send keys, okay, for all this, select a value in drop down, select a value in drop down, okay. So all these methods are really common for all the objects that we're going to create. So we can create a wrapper methods and then we can delegate the actions. We will see that while we get into the framework part. But any doubts in the static variables and static methods? Okay, I would take it as a no. Again, guys, if you go through the videos again, if you have any doubts, always feel free to ask. I'll try some other different ways to explain this. I have tried my best, right? And yeah, now we are all set. We are all set, and we can now learn about interfaces, right? Now this is seems to be right. Let's take a little example, maybe interface demo, something like this. I'll create a package and let's say I don't know what to name it. Let's simply keep it as parent interface. Okay. And this is not a class. This is an interface. Okay. Okay. What is the difference between a class and an interface? This might be your answer, right? Might be your question. We'll see that. Okay. Let's first put it as a class and we will tell you. Okay. Abstract. Let's create some abstract methods. Okay. Public abstract. Let's say method one. Okay. And this is of y. Okay, and out abstract method in parent interface, right? And if you have an abstract method in a class, you need to make sure that you are mentioning abstract here. Okay. So if sorry guys, this is an abstract method, then you don't need all these things. Okay. So there is no declaration. So only the declaration, no body. Okay. So now I'll also create a child class. Okay, child class. This child class normally extends your parent. Okay, maybe this is name is rightly changed. Okay, so let's use this. Okay, maybe I could have named this as parent class for now, so that we don't make any sense. Okay, now I change this to parent class. This is child class. Okay, in the child class, if you are extending the parent class, you need to provide the implementation. Okay, you are providing the implementation. Child class method, right? This is fine. But let's say this child class also needs to do one more inheritance. Maybe it also wants to inherit property from some other parent. And let's say I have a new class called as parent 2 class. Okay, and this parent 2 class, for some reasons, it has different method. Let's say public abstract void method 2. Okay, this question you guys have already asked. If the method name is different, can we extend multiple classes, right? So we're going to see that today. So parent class, parent to class, right? I'm trying to extend two things here. Okay, so now this is still clearly telling, hey, multiple inheritance is not supported, right? So the class cannot extend multiple classes, right? So if you think your class is having only abstract methods, okay, you don't have any non-abstract methods, then okay, you have multiple things. Let's say public abstract void method 3, right? So maybe 3. Okay, so you have only abstract methods. Okay, then you don't have to mention it as abstract class, you can just mention it as interface. Now this makes more sense for me to rename this to parent interface. I go here and the same way here also it's having only abstract methods, so I can make this as an interface. Now we go to the child class and I will rename this first parent to interface. Okay, now a child class can only implement a parent interface. It cannot extend. Now it becomes implements. Now if I hover my mouse over this, it is telling, hey, just implement the methods. Okay, so I added this. So if you notice, the parent interface has two methods. One is method 1 and method 3. Okay, maybe I'll change this to method 2 and this one as method 3. Okay, now I have implemented this and I have added method 1 and method 2, and then I overridden this. I can provide whatever the implementation I want. Now there is parent 2 interface that has only one method, that is method 3. I have implemented and provide the implementation. Why I can able to do multiple inheritance here? Okay, if you notice, I'm inheriting two properties. One is method 1, method 2 from parent interface, and method 3 from parent 2 interface. Okay, the reason I could do is, first one, okay, this interfaces doesn't have any constructors. Okay, these don't have constructor. For example, if I try to create a constructor, there is no constructor, right? It's still, hey, not allowed in interface, this doesn't have a constructor. Then why people will use interface, right? The people will use interface to define the skeleton, to define the rules. For example, yesterday we saw about bank. The bank RBI will define certain rules. You need to have, withdrawal, we need to have deposit methods, but you provide your own implementation, right? But the abstract classes seems to have problems with multiple inheritance, but the interface seems to solve this problem. Okay, and then one more thing, where we will use constructors, we will use constructors to initialize, right, to init the instance variables. These are the two places why we use constructors, right? Now here, if I try to create public string some value, okay, let's say name, whatever. Okay, I type like this, it is telling, hey, variable name might not have been initialized, you initialize this. Okay, I'll initialize this again. Now I cannot do this. See, by default this is static and final. Okay, even though you are not declaring this. Okay, this is public static final string. This is also public abstract. Okay, you don't have to mention the C. It is highlighted in gray color, which means even though you are not defining it, it will be treated as a public static final. Here also it is public abstract. Okay, because anyway, if you are having an interface, you will only have abstract methods, so you don't need to mention this. Again, if you have only the abstract methods, anyways, it needs to be extended by child classes, and the access modifier is also public. It has to be accessed by everyone, so we are making it as public, so you don't have to really mention it. So only thing that you need to mention is the return type and the method name. Okay, same way, you don't have to mention this here. And also in case of this one, okay, anyways, the interface does not have a constructor, so you cannot have a non-static field. So always whatever the field you are going to declare here is static. Okay, good. Then I remove this. Again, this whatever you are going to declare here is final, because you cannot change this. Okay, once you declare this, you cannot change this. You declare some value, you cannot change this. Okay, maybe you are declaring school name, you cannot change this. So this is always final, so you don't have to mention this. Again, this is public by default, so you don't have to really mention this. See, it's telling modifier public is redundant for interface fields, because whatever the fields that you declare, it's by default public, static and final. Okay, even though you are not mentioning it. Okay, So that's the advantage, guys. So it doesn't have a constructor, so it will not call your constructor. So whenever you're creating an object for your child class, okay, you don't have to worry about which parent constructor it has to call. Previously in abstract class, we have a constructor, so we need to mention which class it needs to call. So that's why it is limited that you can extend only to one class. But in case of interface, there is no constructor, so you don't, it doesn't have a dilemma to which constructor it needs to make a call. Okay. And also previously there is a possibility, you know, that you can have some implementation that you want to override it. Okay, in abstract class you can have implementation and then you can override it, but in case of interface there is only abstract methods, so it clearly knows which method needs to be called, right? Again, if you might have one doubt, let's say I have some method that is common in both these interfaces. Let's create void method tree. And here also I'll have void method tree. Again, I don't have to mention this, right? So now it doesn't throw any error, right? So which one it will use? Okay, whether it will use this or either it will use this. This might be your question, right? But the thing is, these are all abstract methods, right? That doesn't has any implementation. So whether it overrides this or this doesn't really matter, right? Anyway, you are going to provide your own implementation. Okay, so it doesn't really matter, right? So whether you are overriding from here or here, that doesn't really matter because the implementation is here. Okay, you cannot make super calls. Okay, you cannot make super calls because there is no method, so there is nothing you can use. Okay, there is no constructor, so you cannot use it. Okay, there is no method implementations. In abstract class we have a method that, with implementation, so you want to reuse it, you can call super dot that but particular method name. This method doesn't have a body, then what I will use? So you can type super dot, but you don't have any methods to use it. So there is no use of super, there is no use of this. Okay, there is nothing called as this here as well. Okay, if you try to have a constructor, there is constructor is not possible. You cannot have this keyword in interface. So this is the difference, guys. Okay, the first problem that we understood yesterday is, if you're using abstract classes, we have one problem. So which constructor it needs to call? If you use two classes here, it has a problem which constructor I need to call, because when I create an object for the child class, it calls the parent class constructor as well, right? So while that time it has a confusion which one to call, that's why we cannot extend multiple classes. But the difference between classes, abstract class and interface is, interface doesn't have a constructor, interface doesn't have any methods with body. Okay, so there is no confusion which method to override or which constructor to call. Okay, and it doesn't have a constructor, so all the fields that you declare is by default public, static and final. Okay, you cannot have instance variables declared in interface. Okay, then why people use interface? Interface is used to set skeleton for everything. Okay, so interfaces are really important. Okay, will try to use the interfaces in our framework development and we will try to understand that in detail. But most probably, instead of me having HDFC, RBI, SBI, instead of me declaring all these things here, I can just use interface to define some skeletons. For example, let's say let's take another example. Okay, maybe I'll take an example of companies, uh, or whatever. Okay, maybe companies, and there is what example we could take. Okay, maybe I want to create a SaaS company, right? So SaaS, maybe let's assume the SaaS companies will provide. Okay, instead of this I can make this. Again, guys, I hope you all know SaaS, right? Maybe this is too technical. Let's check some other different ones. What could I think of now? Let's go to back to the animals, right? And let's keep things simple, right? So instead of this as class, I can put as interface. The reason being, I'm going to define what does an animal does, right? When you think about animal, you will think about, okay, these animals are public, abstract, void, they all can eat, right? And as I mentioned, you don't have to mention this public abstract because they are all by default public abstract. And then they all can sleep. You don't have to provide the implementation, right? I don't know whatever the animal, but these animals can all sleep, eat, and then what else they do? They run as well, right? So you define what they do. Again, most all the animals, let's say, public static final string, final int, let's say number of bytes, okay, equal to 4, right? So you can define all these things. Again, this is redundant, you can remove them, right? Right, they all have 4 legs, right? Okay, so this is how it is, guys. So you can use interface to define the skeleton, okay? Define something that is like a rule, okay? And then whatever the animals, or I'm going to create, let's say domestic animal or whatever, okay? I have domestic animal class that basically tries to provide some implementation, okay? I don't know how all the domestic animals will eat, how they sleep, how they run, I don't know all these things, okay? Then this will also be changed as an interface, okay? This is an interface, okay? Then I'll create one more class, that's dog, okay? Now the dog will implement an interface that is domestic animal, and this domestic animal is an interface. This is an interface, right? So the interface will extend another interface. I'll tell this, guys, okay? Okay, we'll implement the method, okay? Let's see. Okay, now I'm implementing all these things, and yeah, this is fine. So now the rule is, let's again take test interface test. Okay, now, okay, what we have done, we have an interface, we have child interface. This is a child interface that is extending another interface, okay? But this time, but when I create this, I don't have any implementation with me, okay? So I don't provide any implementation, okay? Because I cannot predict how all the domestic animals will eat, how all the sleep methods will, how the all the domestic animals will sleep, because I don't know the implementation. But I have the rule, okay? I have a rule that I need to provide implementation, but I don't know the implementation at this point of time. So I leave it to the child classes to provide the implementation, okay? Now you can provide implementation like dog eating, okay? Now let's go here and create a reference, let's say animal reference. So this animal is coming from animals package, and animal equal to new dog. So now you can implement this. So this is asking which class you want to import, which from which package, because there is two dog classes. One is inside inheritance package, one is inside animals package. I want to, you know, create inside the animals package, right? Now animal dot, okay, we have implemented eat, right? So eat. So let's try to run it. Okay, now this is all working. So now the thing that we need to understand is a class can extend another class. A class can implement another interface. Implement one or more interface. Can extend only one class. Only one class. Okay. The interface can extend one or more interface. Okay. So this is the things, right? Okay, so we can have a class that can only extend only one class, okay? That's because multiple inheritance, we understood why the reason yesterday, and but a class can implement one or more interfaces. The reason being, the interfaces doesn't have constructors, so there is no dilemma which constructor to call. There doesn't have any instance variables, so there is no dilemma on how to set the initialize these variables. So that's why we can have a class that implements more classes, right? One or more interfaces. The same way, the interface can extend one or more interfaces. We need to use extends keyword because here, if there is an interface called as animal, domestic animal, extending another interface. Okay, so yeah, it can also extend multiple interfaces because it doesn't really matter. Anyways, all of them going to have abstract methods. Okay, the reason we use interfaces is to set up the skeleton, set up the rules while we create. Okay, we will understand this detail while we create our framework. Okay, any doubts in this, guys, so far?
Yes, Mustin, one confusion.
Yeah.
So, what is the need of extending extending the other interface, right? So,
Mhm.
what is the need of that? Because anyhow, interface contains the abstract methods, right?
Yeah.
So, what's the use of extending interface?
Okay. Okay. Now, let's say you have different set of rules, right? Say, uh, uh, you know, as a domestic animal, I'm an interface, right? And I just tell I have only one method, or I have something like a variable, let's say public static final, that is a boolean is domestic. Okay, is domestic. Okay, now I'm an interface called domestic animal. I have set some rules. Okay, is domestic equal true, or I may have let's assume I have a method like abstract void um, tame me. Okay, I'm a domestic animal, people can tame me. Okay, but how they taming me, that they have to do. Okay, they may tame me. Okay, whatever the way they want to tame me, they can do it, right? But I can define whatever it want, right? But instead of I writing, so if I have a domestic animal interface, I don't want to type void eat. Okay, okay, void sleep. Okay, I don't want to do this. Okay, because this is already defined in another interface. Okay, these are all the rules that is also applicable for me, and on top of it I have my own rule. Correct?
Yes, yes, got it.
That's the reason. So if you have a set of rules that you need to follow, then it is also applicable to you. They just extend that interface and also make that rule applicable for you as well. So if the reason why we created this animal, because this interface can help domestic animal interface as well as wild animal interface. Suppose I have wild animal interface where is domestic equal to false, it will have is domestic equal to false, and there can be some methods that is only specific to uh, wild animals, right? But they all have something that is really common, that is this, that is defined in the animal, right? So you want to reuse something, or you want to inherit certain rules that is from the another interface. That's the reason why an interface extending another interface. Okay, so now I have to implement one method that is tame me. Okay, people, uh, okay, you can provide your own implementation, whatever how you want to tame your dog, right? Yeah, so this is the advantage of an interface extending another interface, just to make sure that you don't rewrite the logic. If we have already a bunch of rules defined, okay, you want to reuse the same rules, then you can do it. Okay, maybe you can also take example from the bank. RBI set some rules. Okay, maybe in Tamil Nadu level there is one head bank, there is no such, but just imagine there is Tamil Nadu head bank. Okay, it has some rules. Okay, if you're working for Tamil Nadu, maybe you need to abide by, you need to do something else. Okay, you need to have some rules. On top of it, you also need to follow the RBI rules, right? Yeah, so that's how it is. For example, you can also take income tax, right? Indian income tax set some rules, but as a state government, they're also setting some rules. Okay, they have their own state GST, right? You want to pay professional tax, we are all paying professional tax as IT employees, right? So on top of the income tax, even your state charging you state tax, right? The professional tax. So this is how it is, guys. If you want to extend or inherit some rules that is defined somewhere, you extend another interface.
Yes, yeah, got it. Thank you,
Yeah,
Mudhar.
yeah. So any other doubts? So we will understand. Okay, this is the reason. Okay, this is the reason. Okay, let's go here. The good old term web driver equal to new Chrome driver. This is what we write, right? And this web driver is an interface. Okay, this interface is also extend. See, an interface can extend to only interface. It cannot extend a class, right? So this is also seems to be an interface. This interface has certain rules, list of find web elements. So they have already defined some rules. Like if you are going to, do some search contexting, okay, it has to have a method like find elements and find element. Okay, so they have already this, right? So this is a public abstract. So they don't even mention this public abstract here, right? And it needs to take a by argument, and then it needs to return list of web elements, right? And here also the find element has some rules that it needs to accept a by argument, and it needs to return web element, right? These are all things we have already used, right? Where it is coming from? It is coming from search context. Okay, this is the web driver. So the web driver is also having a lot of rules, right? So if you notice, string current URL, get title, all these things are here as well, right? If constructor do the initialization of instance members, then who does the initialization of the static members? Where will be the static members stored in the memory? That's a really good question. Static members can be initialized with the help of, again guys, it's a good question, but I thought I will cover for the later point of time, but since someone asked, I will do it now. Okay, where we have covered about the interface. Yeah. Okay. Okay, guys, by default your static variables will also get stored in heap memory. Okay, this will also get stored in heap memory. But the thing is, if you want to initialize some static variables, okay, let's say you have an animal, let's say you have a dog class that has some static variable, let's say public static name of string name, okay, whatever. Okay, you have something like this and you want to initialize this. Okay, then you cannot use constructor. That is not a good approach. Then all the static members can be initialized with the help of static blocks. I'll tell you what is static blocks, but yeah, you can define something here. Okay. Okay, again guys, if you have non-static members, you can initialize with the help of constructors. If you have static members, you can write some statement like this and then you can initialize this. I didn't cover this explicitly because this might confuse you at this point of time, but just understand you can initialize static members with static block, and you can also have multiple static blocks to define whatever you want, right? So it will be executed in order. Okay, first it will execute this and then it will execute this. Okay, so we will understand when this will get executed with a simple example. Okay, let's go to some test. Bank test, interface test. Let's go here. Let's remove all these things and let's not do anything. Okay, and we'll just put static block. Okay, now this is like this. Okay, now I'm trying to run my main method. Let's see what happens. See guys, the static block is executed even before my main method. Okay, we all normally know that our test execution starts from here. Okay, we thought this will be executed first, and maybe we are not making any call, so this will not be even executed. But the thing is, whenever you have a static blocks, okay, or you are defining some static variables, okay, what happens? Okay, uh, again guys, I need to speak about class loader and memory and all that, but yeah, first it understand. Okay, Java compiler, what it does is before even Java compiler runs all this code, okay, you have something called as class loader. Okay, I mean, I don't want to, again guys, if you think this is too much, ignore this. You don't need to really learn this now. We have different advantage, we will learn it later. Okay, so we have something called as class loader, which fetches, okay, all the classes and load in memory. Okay, so that it will be ready for compilation. Okay, so this class loader is a component inside JDK that actually does this. Okay, which will fetch all the class files that you want to compile, and all these things. Okay, it will load it in the memory. By loading it in the memory, it will look for all the static blocks. Okay, and then it'll, if you have any static variables, you are defining some static variables, they all get defined at that point of time itself. Let's say I have a variable that is private static, um, string, name, something like this. Okay, I'm just telling name. Okay, let's try to run it now. See, these are all is getting, set even before you even, execute your main method. Before even doing this, it has set this value. Okay, maybe I can also do yes out name. Okay, now I can remove this. I'll run it. Okay, first I'm a static block is getting executed, then this value is getting printed, right? Again, I can also change the value here. Okay, now let's say I want to change the value. Let's say name equal to what up, and then is so name. Okay, now let's try to run it. See, first I'm in static block. First it printed whatever the default name we have, and then I'm just trying to change the name. And then after changing the name, I'm just trying to print it. And it is getting printed. And this is all happening even before your program starts. Okay, so the class loader, which fetch all the classes and then loads into the memory. While loading into the memory, it will look for all the static variables and it will initialize them, and then it will also check for all the static blocks in your classes, scan for all this. So it'll scan, search class by class, and it'll search for all the static blocks. A block means it's entrapped in the open brace and close brace. Okay, if you start with static, which means it's a static block, we call it as a static block. Okay, and then it will execute all these components before even compiling or executing your main method. So that's what you want to understand. So if you want to initialize your static members, you can use static blocks. Okay, if you want to initialize your non-static members, you have to use your constructors. Again, constructors will be executed after your main method. Okay,
Okay.
question regarding extending interface. Does inheritance work between them as there are no constructors? Yes, it will work. That's why, see, again, you are in implementing an interface just because you want to at least get all these things, right? So a class is implementing interface to inherit these properties, at least the number of legs. Okay, but most commonly this is also having, okay, all these methods are having some skeleton that they need to do all these things. Okay, that's why we are inheriting. So the inheritance is actually happening. Okay,
Amutan, can you please explain once why the constructors are like, I didn't understand the part where you have explained about the constructors during the interface.
constructor during interface. Okay, okay. See
Mhm.
guys, first thing, okay, an interface can only have uh, abstract methods. Okay, and then they can only have uh, static final string. Okay, whatever. Okay, so they can only have this. Okay, what is the when we will need to have constructor? What is the use of constructor? Constructors are basically used to construct the object, right? Maybe you want to initialize some instance variables, you will use constructor. Here there is no instance variables. All the variables that you're going to have here is all static methods. So there is no reason why you want to have a constructor. That's why people didn't have constructor here. Okay, your interface doesn't have a constructor. Okay, just because there is no use for it. Okay, because interfaces are most probably used to define the skeletons. Okay, and again, one more thing is the multiple inheritance is not supported because if you have same method names in two classes, then your child class doesn't know which method it is overriding. Okay, so when you make a super call, okay, it doesn't know which method to call, because in case of classes it can also have body. Okay, here there is no body, so whether it is overriding or this one or another interface, that doesn't really matter. Anyway, you are going to provide the implementation, so it doesn't really matter.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, so the multiple inheritance is supported in the form of interfaces in Java. Okay, in terms of classes, multiple inheritance is not supported, but in Java, the multiple inheritance is supported in case of interfaces. Again, guys, don't really worry about these things. Okay, I have a lot of things to be covered. Okay, I will cover these things in framework. Okay, you will understand why someone will have an interface with just abstract methods. That doesn't even make sense, right? That doesn't even make sense. Why someone should have that, right? That's an absolutely correct question, but we will see about that in the framework development. Okay, even if you don't understand any of this, most people in world are working as a developer or automation testers, most of them don't understand all these things. Okay, so that's okay, right? Because even before you learn all these things, you are already in a position to automate a website, right? You all entered some values into a website, you all able to click something, right? So if you don't understand this, that's absolutely fine. That shouldn't stop you from doing your Selenium operations. Okay, the Selenium doesn't require a lot of Java. Okay, the Java is required when you want to develop a framework, when you want to understand what is happening behind the scenes. Okay, all these things needs Java. Okay, so we learn Java cannot be taught in a day, cannot be taught in a 2 months course. It has to be felt, it has to be rather realized. Okay, you need to feel the Java, right? It takes a little bit of time. If you don't understand, that's well and good. You have a lot of opportunity to learn in the future. Okay, don't worry about it too much. Any other doubts before we wrap the session? Guys, I made my level best to explain this in easiest way possible. I'll also see if I can make this more easy. But yeah, uh, but for now, just try to at least get the glimpse, the summary that I'm trying to say. Okay, why multiple inheritance is not supported in abstract classes, why multiple inheritance is supported in an interface, what does an interface has, why the variables are static final, what is the use of static variable, what is the use of static methods, right? This summary is more than enough for you, right? They may ask you in an interview, what is multiple inheritance, or why we use interface, right? So the interfaces are predominantly used to set skeletons or rules for all the child classes that are going to inherit them. Okay, that's the exact thing. Okay, you can give them the example, like we have a bank, RBI, that defines all these rules. All the child classes that are going to implement this interface needs to follow these rules. So interfaces predominantly used to set the skeleton or the rules. This how your answer needs to be, right? Good. We will cover more in the upcoming classes. If there are no more doubts, I'll stop the recording.